This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Eben Jansen. This show, of course, live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now with the entire show available on our YouTube channel that's on demand. Now today, crimes against children in South Africa continues unabated, it seems. Today, we ask if this is a criminal or social problem. Rights groups are urging SADC countries to address abuses and uphold democracy at a meeting of regional heads of state in Zimbabwe starting today. Also, we continue our tribute this Women's Month with one of our finest opera singers here in studio. It should be quite a treat. First, though, Katrine gives us the headlines.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Malan, and let's have a look at the top stories this morning. Blood tests from a patient undergoing Ebola test at the Charlotte Mccauley Hospital in Johannesburg are expected later today. The 37-year-old man had been working as a health and safety officer at a mine in Liberia. He returned to South Africa 12 days ago and initially appeared healthy. Department of Health spokesperson Joe Mccauley has confirmed the suspected case.
There is somebody who's coming, who's a South African, who's staying here, who happens to come home from work in Liberia. But this is his home and he came back. But unfortunately yesterday he fell ill and therefore his fever was of interest to us and therefore indeed we are checking that person.
Moving to the courtroom today, one of the suspects arrested following the death of 3-year-old Westbury toddler Luke Tibbetts is expected in court. Keenan Mccauley is facing a charge of pointing a firearm during a shooting between him and his co-accused, Lendre Kaku. Both have been in custody following the incident about 2 weeks ago. The toddler, who was shot on his mother's lap, died after 6 days on life support. The trial of Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir and 5 others will continue in the High Court in Johannesburg sitting in Palm Ridge today. This after the matter was postponed on Friday. Krejcir and 5 others were charged following allegations that they recruited a man known as Dr. Mccauley to help smuggle 25 kilograms of tick to Australia. Newly appointed SADC chairperson Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe has urged Southern African leaders to lessen their dependence on foreign aid. Mugabe was speaking at a 2-day meeting at Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe after taking the reins as head of the 15-nation bloc.
To be our own organization, when close to 60% of the SADC programs are externally funded.
Then in the U.S., clashes between demonstrators and police have left Missouri Governor Jay Nixon with no choice but to extend the curfew imposed under his declared state of emergency in Ferguson. Protesters have repeatedly taken to the streets, upset over the shooting of Michael Brown, an unarmed black teenager gunned down by a white police officer.
I share their frustration and their conviction that we cannot allow the ill will of the few to undermine the goodwill of the many and continue to put the people and businesses of this community in danger.
Well, remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrine. Now, crimes against children have dominated the headlines again this month, with children from as young as 4 years old being killed. Tigran Morris, Luke Tibbetts and Cuban van Wyk will forever be remembered for the unjustifiable way in which their young lives were cut short. Well, the even more unsettling part is that these are only 3 cases that made the front pages. Now, our producer, Anine Dormal, is standing by with a timeline on more of these shocking cases.
Yes, thank you, Ebers. Since the end of last year, South Africa has seen a number of child deaths that can be linked to crime and child abuse cases. Let's quickly take a look at only some of those cases. In November of 2013, the mutilated body of a 6-month-old was found in Diepsloot in what neighbours and relatives claimed was a Muti murder, but police insist it was an attack by rats. Then in May this year, a manhunt was launched for a man who allegedly killed a 2-year-old boy by slashing his throat with a broken bottle in Limpopo. In June, the 6-year-old Loyiso Lududi was found dead near a river in Samira location in Pietermaritzburg. She had an open wound to the head. Then in July, a pastor was arrested for the murder of a 3-year-old boy after his body parts were found at a church in Pongola in KwaZulu-Natal. Then this month, 3-year-old Cuban van Wyk went missing from his uncle's house in Ramaphosa. Later that week, his family heard the body of a boy his age had been found on an abandoned mine dump near Reiche Park. The face of the child found on the mine dump had been badly bruised, with one half of his body burnt beyond recognition. And then just recently, 3 men were arrested for allegedly killing a 10-year-old girl in Gugulethu in the Western Cape. The body of the girl was found hidden under her grandfather's bed. Neighbours claimed the girl had been raped and killed by relatives. Now, Eben, as mentioned, these are only some of the cases that have come to attention over the last few months. I'll leave it to you and our guests to talk about the topic.
Yeah, thank you very much to you. And in the statistics are simply staggering if you look at it. And here in studio to talk to us and give us some answers, we're joined by Lieutenant General Solomon Mccauley, the National Police Spokesperson. Very good morning to you, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your show.
And then also in Pretoria from Child Welfare, Tshwane, we have Dineo Daly. A very good morning to you, Dineo, and thank you for being with us as well today. If I can start with you, Lieutenant General, these cases that we see now are highlighted in the media, and they get a lot of cases, a lot of interest rather. Mm. Is it a case that we only see these high-profile cases and there hasn't been a real increase, or has there been an increase of crimes against especially children in the last year in South Africa?
Well, the Minister of Police will be releasing crime stats next month, so I don't want to steal the minister's thunder, so to speak. But every year, we in South Africa report in the region of just under 1,000 children that are killed in this fashion. Majority of them have to do with cases where children are used for purposes of muti. I can add to that list that and the timeline that you just shared with us. We're dealing with a case now in Mpumalanga where a 3-year-old was found with body parts missing. So it's a serious challenge for us, and we need all hands on deck in as far as the police and the community are concerned to make sure that we can bring these numbers down.
Dineo, you work with Child Welfare. What has been your view and what is your response to the question of these, what the police now say, majority are muti killings?
Well, Eben, I think, yes, as the Lieutenant General has said, a majority of them are muti murders, but then we're also finding that there are a lot of cases of sexual abuse within the homes perpetrated by family members, and that is deeply concerning for us as Child Welfare Tshwane.
Do we have crime hotspots where these things occur? Do we have certain communities where it's worse, or is it spread all over the country at the moment?
My feeling is it is spread all over the country. We have seen, working within the Tshwane municipality area, that the crimes that are perpetrated against children are across the board, from the most affluent areas to the poorest areas within the communities.
Let's come back to you, sir, in studio, and talk about the plan. What is the plan in dealing with these muti killings? Because we even see it in other scenarios. It played out at Marikana and so forth. Is there a plan, and how can we execute this plan in order to deal with the problem?
There is a plan. But the challenge here is that the abuses and the killings happen with the involvement of family members. So a lot of these crimes happen behind closed doors. And it's virtually impossible to have a police officer in each and every home to make sure that the children are not abused, to make sure that there's no crime against children. But what we've seen working in other parts of the country is where there is active involvement of communities in the community police forums, where we deal with schools so that children can report abuses through schools. We've got a program where we say adopt a school. So each a school is given, say for instance, 2 police officers. The school principal has got a telephone number. As and when there are issues, they can phone that police officer. The police officer will also come to the school, visit the school on a regular basis to talk about not only issues of abuse, but issues of drugs as well, because it's a major, major problem that's affecting our communities.
Yeah, a lot of the judgment problems happen because of the rise of drugs in our community. But let me just go to Tshwane quickly. I wanted to ask you, Dineo, this problem is often seen as a criminal problem linked to crime and drugs and so forth. But it is as much a social problem, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is a social problem. And as Lieutenant General has said, we need community involvement to ensure that we are able to curb the crimes against children, because we cannot be everywhere all the time. And we need people out there to be able to take up the responsibility and report any suspicious behavior that they might be noticing, either within families or with a particular child.
Today, quickly, the police always gets the blame that, yes, the police don't do their job. But surely the responsibility of our children is not the police's, but that of the wider group, the family, the friends, the father, the mother.
Definitely. We all have a responsibility as community members to be caring for children. And the police cannot do all of this work by themselves, as much as we either as social workers cannot do this by ourselves. We need to be able to work together with other government structures and also with community structures so that we can pool whatever resources that we can get and be able to work towards preventing such kind of occurrences.
I want to talk to you, sir, about wider South Africa. We seem to be becoming a little bit immune to violence in this country and desensitized in a way because there's so many of these cases around. Are we becoming immune to violence as a society?
No, I think not. I think the manner in which society has reacted to the killing of these children is very much appropriate. I think if people were just sitting down and not saying anything to say these killings must stop, then I would say no, we're completely desensitized to a point where we're not saying or doing anything when these incidents happen. And I think also one must thank the media in which has brought this issue to the fore, because as the police, we believe strongly in our approach is community-oriented, and because we believe that if we do not have, it's almost like a license to trade. If we do not have acceptance in the communities, if we're not seen to be working with them, if we're not seen to be addressing the problems that the communities are raising, then we're going to struggle. And the manner in which we've dealt with issues in the Reiche Park, we've dealt with issues in Westbury, we've dealt with issues in Pongola, in Mpumalanga as well, where there were children were killed. It shows that not only the police, but also there's support from government and there's proactiveness on the side of the communities, which is very much welcome.
What are your views on that, Dineo?
Yes, I think that it's concerning the level of violence that is out there. And there are times when it seems as though communities are desensitized. But it also goes back to community values and people values. And as social workers, and in particular as Child Welfare Tshwane, we place a very big role on preservation of family systems. And in that way, we're able to teach people, young and old, to be able to look beyond the things that happen now and be able to find ways in which our communities can work together properly.
Quite often, drugs and gangs are related to these kind of crimes within the communities.
True.
How do you address that?
We were in Port Elizabeth the other day, in the northern suburbs, or northern areas rather, of Port Elizabeth. There's a serious problem of drugs. We've got gangs that have split up. At the last count, there are about 21 different gangs. Now, children get caught up in the shootings between the gangs as they fight for territories. But also they're fighting for markets because that's where they want their drugs to be sold. But we're also dealing with a lot of social problems where you find that there's a family, maybe there's 10 or 15 people living in one house. Yeah. The parents are addicted to alcohol or some form of drugs, and the children have to fend for themselves. In instances like that, we have our own social workers of the police, as well as forensic social workers that we use to assist children testify in court. But we also use them in instances like this, and we bring in the Department of Social Development, we bring in the schools, we bring in the churches to say, come help us so that we can address some of these issues. I wanted to quickly ask you, I know you don't want to upstage the minister when the numbers come out, but are you happy that the prosecution rate is going in the right direction as the police? Look, in most of these instances, there's always arrests. And in Mpumalanga, the person arrested is a family member. There's another person that we're looking for is also a member of the family. Yeah. In the Western Cape, is the same thing. We found a child that had died and at the age of 7. And as we conducted our investigation, we found out that the cousins, the brothers, they've been having sex with this child for a while. And it's worrying, but the conviction rates can improve. Yeah. We need to work a lot harder. The National Commissioner has started a program of employing more forensic social workers, because remember, these children, a 3-year-old will not be able to stand up in court. Yeah. So we do employ forensic social workers that can go and testify on behalf of the child. Tanea, finally, what do you say to members of your community that you're working in, if you're seeing that family members are often involved in these kinds of crimes? What's your message to them then? Our plea as Child Welfare Tshwane is that please, community, people out there, let us be vigilant and let us care for our children. And if we are concerned about anything regarding the well-being of children, please report it either to the police or to ourselves as Child Welfare Tshwane. Thank you very much for joining us live from Pretoria. That is Daneo Daly from Child Welfare in the capital. Finally, Lieutenant General Solomon Mccauley, if I can ask you, what is your message to our communities out there today? One of the things that concerns us a lot is that there would be a crime committed. It would be reported to us. We would initiate an investigation. A few days later, members of the family come to us and say, no, we will deal with it as a family. And in cases like that, there's not much that we can do, because we need witnesses, we need victims to come to the fore. And if the family say they'll deal with it, our hands are tied. And we are seeing this happening more and more often. And our appeal and message to the members of the community is that if a crime has been committed, whether it's my brother, it's my sister, it's my cousin, it needs to be reported, it needs to be dealt with, difficult as it may be for the family. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Lieutenant General Solomon Mccauley is the National Police Spokesperson, giving us a little insight. Of course, the crime stats on child murders will be made available later this month by the Minister, says the police spokesman. Thank you once again. Thank you very much. Let's take a quick look now at what's been happening on all social media fronts. Of course, your views are very important to us. Sifisi Ngwenya says, my thoughts and prayers go to the family of Mr. Ambrosini. What a loss for South Africa. IFP, the family. Of course, Mario Orioni Ambrosini passed away this weekend. Zimasile Mjogozeli says, forward-thinking, yes, legislation that legalizes the medical use of cannabis should be called the Ambrosini Act. I think that one will get a lot of support, my dear. And you see where Makinana says, just before the secrecy bill was passed by the National Assembly for the first time in November 2012, Mario Ambrosini called a presser about the bill. And Sammy Ramodike says, rest in peace, Mario. May your soul rest in peace, Honourable Ambrosini. One of the few parliamentarians I like. SA Parli won't be the same without you. Sad passing of Mario Ambrosini, a very well-liked member of Parliament here in South Africa. Let's take a look at the front pages now of the world, what's happening around the world, what is being reported in the US. Well, the international New York Times reporting on the fight against the deadly Ebola virus. It's getting harder
as doctors in West African countries are on the retreat. Then the Washington Post, looking at the recent clashes between demonstrators and police in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson. And across the pond, as they say, the Times in Europe, with a picture of England's women's rugby team on the front page there, winning the Women's Rugby World Cup final in Paris at the weekend. Now, today in history, we remember one of the most inspirational women of the 20th century, Ruth First. Ruth First, journalist, academic, anti-apartheid activist, and member of the South African Communist Party, was brutally killed by a letter bomb in Maputo, Mozambique, on the 17th of August, 1982. That was yesterday, 22 years ago. First left South Africa for the second time with her husband, Joe Slovo, during the height of anti-apartheid campaigns. Her funeral in Maputo was attended by presidents, members of parliament, and envoys from no less than 34 countries. Time for us to take a short break. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News.
Across the globe, the continent, and the entire country, every second, there's always a breaking story. SABC News is your reliable eye, ear, and information system in bringing you events as they happen. Our cutting-edge and hard-hitting journalism leaves no stone unturned, giving you the whole picture every time. Join us every day on SABC One and know what is happening around you. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
A forensic audit report has found that the Independent Electoral Commission's procurement of new premises was neither fair nor transparent.
That wasn't a nice experience to see someone die like that. 18-year-old, I mean, he's still a child.
It's very pretty. Yeah, it looks very great.
Locals say they have their own big five: cattle, sheep, horses, donkeys and pigs.
That's Morning Live, daily at 6 a.m. on SABC News.
Zoom into Africa. This is the Kingdom of Swaziland. The leader is His Majesty King Mswati III. Swaziland got independent from Britain on 6 September in 1968. The population is more than 1 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Lilangeni.
Welcome back. You're still watching Newsroom on SABC News. Rights groups have urged Southern African development communities to address abuses and uphold their people's freedom ahead of a meeting of regional heads of state in Zimbabwe starting today. Amnesty International, together with Human Rights Watch and Zimbabwean lawyers for human rights, have, in a joint statement, deplored what they call serious human rights concerns in Angola, Malawi, Swaziland, Zambia and Zimbabwe. Leaders from the 15-member Southern African Development Community are holding their annual meeting in the resort town of Victoria Falls with Zimbabwe as the official chair. Now, we are joined in studio by the Director of Human Rights Watch in Southern Africa, Tiseke Kasambala. Very good morning, ma'am. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
This meeting, officially, Zimbabwe resumes the chairmanship at Victoria Falls today. Just give us your opinion on this and what your expectation is.
Well, I think it's an interesting time for Zimbabwe. As you know, there were widely contested elections that took place last year. Zimbabwe has been in a state of political crisis for many years now. And it's been many years since President Mugabe was made chair of SADC. So it's an interesting time. They have a new constitution which is very strong on paper. But what we're seeing, the reality on the ground in Zimbabwe, is that we continue to see human rights abuses and human rights violations and violations of economic, social and cultural rights. People don't have access to water. People don't have access to proper health care. There's a lot of problems. We're saying it's an opportunity for the Zimbabwean government to not only address human rights issues domestically, but also to address them within the Southern Africa Development Community.
Now, the 5 countries that you've singled out, they are Swaziland, Malawi, Angola, Zambia, and then Zimbabwe. Serious human rights abuses. Can you specify some of those abuses that you've seen in your investigations?
Yes. Well, for example, Swaziland is a country where we've seen a deterioration in human rights abuses. More recently, two people, a journalist and a human rights lawyer, were imprisoned for 2 years in what we feel was a grossly unfair trial for simply criticizing a judge. They were put away. They've now been locked away for 2 years. We saw threats against civil society activists from Swaziland who went to the U.S. For a summit there. The Prime Minister of Swaziland threatening them and saying that they should be strangled when they come back home because they're enemies of the state. We're seeing similar kinds of actions and arrests of civil society groups and journalists in places like Zambia, for example, where government critics stand to be arrested, where journalists also are not free to report. We have the same problems in Zimbabwe. In Malawi, what we're saying is, yes, there's been elections and there has been an improvement in human rights conditions. But we'd like to see more when it comes to gender discrimination, women's rights issues, an end to child marriage, and the like. So there are a number of problems.
How do you expect SADC to deal with this starting from today? It's almost like SADC has to be the doctor and the patient in the same scenario here, and it might be very, very difficult. And what's your expectation then when these issues are tabled?
Yes, we acknowledge that it's going to be difficult because the very presidents who are committing some of these abuses have to sit around the table and discuss what's happening. But we also want to shine a spotlight on that because for a long time they've been able to get away with it because they feel that no one is reporting. Everyone thinks, well, they can't address the situation. But there needs to be more pressure on them to put the spotlight on themselves. The theme for this year's summit is economic transformation, and they want to empower the people of SADC. And we're saying that you can't transform the economy and empower the people if you don't hold each other accountable and there's no transparent and accountable leadership.
Those exact same leaders will say that we've had free and fair elections in our country. It's been revered by observers as free and fair. How do you respond to that then?
Our argument is in not all the cases have there been free and fair elections. In some of the cases, yes. And like I said, last year Zimbabwe's elections were not necessarily really free and fair. And that's another big issue that SADC leaders need to talk about. When they come together and talk about transforming the country and sustainable development and issues like that, they need to talk about elections. They need to talk about freedom of the people, the rights of people to criticize their governments without being attacked, without being imprisoned, the rights of journalists to shine the spotlight on issues of corruption, on issues of poor governance, on issues of human rights abuses, without those journalists being censored or being subjected to arrest. So what we're saying is don't be hypocritical. Practice what you preach. You're talking about transformation, development, practice what you preach on the ground.
The reverse, I would think, those heads of state that we're meeting today would very much put the reverse sentiment into place and say that Southern Africa is the most stable region on the African continent with very little war and the like, and that they're doing very well. How do you respond to that then?
We're saying that, yes, certainly, I think there is acknowledgement that Southern Africa has been the most stable region on the continent for a long time now. But we're seeing an increase in protests, for example. Here in South Africa, we're seeing an increase in protests in Angola. We're seeing increases in protests across the region. Why? Because there's poverty, there's gross inequalities. So it shows that something is going wrong. And we're saying that if the region wants to remain stable, then its leaders need to address the core issues that are leading to poverty, unemployment, inequalities, such as corruption, bad governance, and lack of respect for human rights and the rule of law.
Is it not time maybe for the people in those countries to step up their campaign and take responsibility for what's happening within their own borders?
I certainly agree. I think civil society groups throughout the region have a role to play in pushing African leaders and our Southern African leaders to do more. But like I said, when they're also being arrested, when their work is being curtailed, it is a huge challenge. And that's why the the responsibility, that's why we're saying the responsibility ultimately lies with the leaders who are elected by the people. That is why they were elected, to deliver economic development, to deliver sustainable development to their people.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. The Director of Human Rights Watch, Tseke Kasambala, joining us to talk about SADC's meeting that starts at the resort town of Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, with Zimbabwe as the chair. Now, newly appointed SADC chairperson is the Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe. He's urged the regional body to lessen its dependence on foreign aid. Mugabe was speaking at the regional summit at Vic Falls in Zimbabwe.
The new chair set the tone with a warning. Relying on foreign resources compromises the regional agenda.
How can we proudly claim SADC to be our own organization when close to 60% of the SADC programs are externally funded? SADC should also wean itself from exporting raw materials, but instead seek to create value chains that lead to exportation of finished goods.
Skills development could mitigate this dependence.
We need to skill hundreds of thousands of our people, focusing more on science, technology, and research and innovation. We need to skill them in technical skills. Vocational training needs to be at the center.
The summit welcomed the recently elected presidents of Madagascar and Malawi. The regional leadership will be pleased that this summit is taking place in the absence of any major conflict in the area, a situation which will allow them to focus more on development and integration. Xandi, SABC News, Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe.
Well, let's take a look now at what's happening on Newsroom's Facebook page. Today, well, you'll see there that former Intelligence Minister Ronnie Kasrils has reiterated a call on government to cut all ties with Israel. You will also see there that a patient from Carltonville on the West Rand is undergoing tests for Ebola at Charlotte Mccauley Hospital here in Johannesburg after returning from Liberia a few days ago, where he works at a mine. And see that a Bryanston man is expected to appear in the Randburg Magistrates Court this week after his wife was stabbed 50 times in the Sandton suburb. ER24 says a passerby found the woman lying on the side of a road and called an ambulance. Now, you can find all of those stories and a whole lot more on our Newsroom Facebook page. That's where we keep it all alive. We at Newsroom recently came across this funny cheese ad on YouTube that went viral, well, a long time ago now. Today, we hope you tackle your week just like this brave mouse did after having a nasty run-in with a mousetrap.
Such a feeling's coming over me. There is wonder in most everything I see. Not a cloud in the sky, got the sun in my eyes, and I won't be surprised if it's a dream. I'm on the top of the world.
This is the end, beautiful friend. This is the end, my only friend, the end of our elaborate plans.
You're watching Newsroom. That's how we want you to attack this week ahead and make a difference all over the continent, wherever you can. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. We'll be back right after this.
Africa is symbolized by these magnificent trees. The Sunland Big Baobab is carbon dated to be around 1,600 years old. When baobabs become 1,000 years old, they begin to hollow inside. In the Big Baobab, this has resulted in the world-famous Baobab Tree Bar.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
I once saw a flower blossom through 27 prison bars of yesterday's unjust flames. I felt an old woman's anticipation for the country's first open elections. And I heard the loud celebrations of that flower's historic inauguration. I was there when Unity sang of how the Springbok never held anything back, and we saw a first-time band of 11 men, Shibobo possibility throughout the land. At the foot of Africa, time remembers how truth can reconcile a people. We carved our name into space, and on the world stage, our art stood united. When we blow that vuvuzela, the whole world goes into a trance. And even in that tearful hour of the flower's separation, we are a people who see the music and hear the flowers dance. SABC, sharing 20 years of inspiration.
Well, hello and welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the top stories this morning. Blood tests from a patient undergoing Ebola test at the Charlotte Mccauley Hospital in Johannesburg are expected later today. The 37-year-old man had been working as a health and safety officer at a mine in Liberia. He returned to South Africa 12 days ago and initially appeared healthy. Department of Health spokesperson Joe Maila has confirmed the suspected case. Moving to the courtroom today, one of the suspects arrested following the death of a 3-year-old Westbury toddler Luke Tibbets is expected in court. Mccauley is facing a charge of pointing a firearm during a shooting between him and his co-accused Lindray Kaku. Both have been in custody following the incident about 2 weeks ago. The toddler who was shot on his mother's lap died after 6 days on life support. Then the trial of Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir and 5 others will continue in the High Court in Johannesburg sitting in Palm Ridge today. This after the matter was postponed on Friday. Krejcir and 5 others were charged following allegations that they recruited a man known as Dr. Mccauley to help smuggle 25 kilograms of tick to Australia. Then in the U.S., clashes between demonstrators and police have left Missouri Governor Jane Nixon with no choice but to extend the curfew imposed under his declared state of emergency in Ferguson. Protesters have repeatedly taken to the streets upset over the shooting of Michael Brown, an unarmed black teen gunned down by a white police officer recently. Now remember, all these top stories are available on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Now, it's Women's Month, and all praise should go to women who have made it despite challenging backgrounds. The question today still remains, can women today have it all? PepsiCo Chief Executive Officer Indra Nooyi recently said that women only pretend that they can have it all. These were her opinions when she was openly speaking about the issues of balancing work and personal life. Her honesty highlights the real challenges that women face when it comes to balancing both. Now today we are joined by Christel Fourie, the Managing Director of MUA Insurance Acceptancies in Cape Town. Morning, Christel.
Good morning.
Christel, let's just start off with that statement. Women, we pretend we can have it all. Do you agree with this, and why?
Well, when I saw this article or read this article, I was so encouraged to hear someone of Indra's seniority come out and be honest about this, because the reality is that we can't have it all. You know, there's only so much time in a day, and being a working mother takes a lot of energy. So I think women tend to not be honest about it, because if you're honest, you say that either I'm not great at being a mom or at work. You know, you have to sacrifice time somewhere. So yes, I do agree with that statement, and I find it very encouraging.
Now, Christelle, do you then say that we should choose one or the other? You should either choose a successful career or be a successful mother?
No, I don't agree with that at all. I think understanding the challenges that are faced by women in senior roles in business, and not just in senior roles, I think all working mothers, understanding those challenges and making sure that those women's needs are taken care of. You can create space in the workplace to ensure that women thrive through the different phases of motherhood, so that they stay with the organisation and make a meaningful contribution. So I do think that you can be successful at both, but to think that it won't come with personal sacrifice would be a terrible lie to yourself, and you'll face some challenges as a result of that.
Now, from personal experience, what are the challenges that women today face in the boardroom, in the office?
Well, first of all, you know, there's obviously the traditional glass ceiling. If we look at financial services in South Africa as a whole, we have very few women in senior roles. And I personally believe that a big reason for that is women tend to step away from the opportunities, because the challenges that you face as if you choose to be a mother as well are very, very daunting. So, yes, in South Africa, we still have a very long way to go. And how to deal with that, you know, it all comes down to planning, to making sure that you've got structure in your life, not just in your business life, but in your personal life as well. And absolutely be prepared to make those sacrifices. If you choose to be a working mother, the most important job first is to be a mother. And then I suppose to a large degree, if I speak from my own personal experience, my indulgence in life is my career. It's what I enjoy to do. And in order to carry on doing both, I have to work hard at it and make those other sacrifices that you know, things like, you know, going to gym very early in the morning and not being able to be as social as I would like to be.
That was my next question. How do you do it all?
Well, I don't think you can always do it all, but you can really try. And I think it all comes down to planning and knowing that, knowing that you will have to make sacrifices. I think a very, very important aspect is to have a supportive partner. Because if you don't have someone who supports you in your career as a mother, you will sacrifice either your career or your marriage if you are married. So a lot of women face that choice as they grow through their careers, is that if they don't have a supportive partner, that they do have to make that very, very ultimate sacrifice. And also to make sure that your children understand who you are and what you're trying to achieve, and that those achievements will bring its own rewards, maybe not the same as the mom who's at home all the time, but that you will be able to give them maybe more different kinds of rewards than you would have had being a full day stay-at-home mom.
Christelle, would you say there's been a shift in men rather being those staying at home, taking care of the kids, and the women pursuing a successful career? Are we seeing that?
I don't think we obviously see some of that from time to time. I had an interesting incident the other day. I did a talk show on radio, and it was mostly men who phoned in and made some very positive comments. But I think the one thing that came out, the one comment was, women should stop playing the gender card because it's not necessary. And, it's that sort of comment that makes me very sad, because women play such an important role in society. If you choose to be both a mother and often, most of the time, women have to work to give that contribution to the family. Now, take it a step further, and you have that sort of shift in roles where the women work and the husband is at home. It happens, but it's in our very traditional society. It's something that you don't see a lot of. And if you think about men in business, in senior leadership positions, often they have their wives who stay at home and take care of arranging everything in the personal life. When you choose to be a working mom, you still have to do all of that. You have to do the homework, you have to buy the school clothes, if you have to go away on a conference, you have to make sure that everything is in order and in place while you're away. So the challenges are just of a different dimension and are more. But, with everything in life, the more you give, the more you get. So if you are fortunate enough to be a mother and you can have a career in this world, I think it's just absolutely fantastic. And you have to work at it. It won't just come without any sacrifice, that's for sure.
Well, Chriselle, thank you so much for joining us this morning. The debate on whether women today, if we can have it all, and whether or not we pretend we can have it all, that debate, we're continuing that on our Facebook page. You can go let us know what you think. Also on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Now, as we continue to pay tribute to only some of South Africa's most remarkable women this month, we are joined today by one of the country's rising young stars. After completing a postgraduate honours degree in music and performances at the University of Cape Town, opera singer Xandi Mzazi was chosen to represent the university's South African College of Music. With this, she performed in countries around the world and in extracts from several different operas. But before we get to know her a little bit better, let's take a quick look at a magical performance this morning.
Angelicus, fit panis hominum, panis cellicus, figuris terminum, oris
Simply amazing, a thing of absolute beauty. Now, thank you for joining us and being here in studio with us, Xandi.
Thank you for having me.
Before I get into your career and your work and so forth, we're talking about inspirational women, and you listened to that interview a little bit earlier about whether women can have it all, career, job, and be married and all that sort of things. What are your views?
To be honest with you, I think a woman can have it all. When you see yourself in a situation where you don't have a choice, automatically, subconsciously, you just manage to do everything. Yeah. But once you know that you have other options, and then you start doubting if you can do all of these things. And bear in mind that we live in a modern society where now we have helpers. Some people have more than two helpers in their households, and still they can't manage to do everything. But if you go to the villages, where I come from, your mom, when you grew up, she used to wake up at the crack of dawn to get the kids ready for school, to make sure that my dad's things are ironed and prepared, still has to go for work, come back, cook, and so forth. Yeah. And she did it all. And look at us, look at me.
And they never complained.
No.
My mother was one of those that ran a business, on her own, very successful business, had 9 children, and she never complained. She's 81 years old, still alive today and going like a train. Yes. Let's move on to your career. You studied at UCT. That in itself is an achievement with distinction and so forth. But just tell me, go to the beginning. When did you realize you're not just really a singer, but you're an opera singer?
I've always been a singer ever since I was a little girl. I've always loved singing. And then I only discovered that actually, I've fallen in love with opera music. I think I was 16 years old, in my community. And this other lady, saw something special in me and said, we have to actually look out for this young lady because she's going to be something special. Do we do enough
in South Africa for the opera and arts like that, or are we a savage country that don't care?
I don't think people don't care. I think people care. I think it's changing. Yes, back in the days, it never used to be as palatable as it is now. Now opera has become a social thing. It's an in thing. Everybody wants to be associated with opera music. So it's changed drastically.
Tell me about your travels that you've done around the world. Must have been wonderful, and the responses you've had.
I've been. Okay, my favorite place that I went to was France. Mm-hmm. I love France.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's amazing. Yes, a lot of people always say no, French people are not the friendliest of them all. But I think if you go to any state, you are expected to speak in that language.
Yes.
If you come to South Africa, people here in the location, they will direct you in Zulu or Xhosa or Tswana or Afrikaans, you name it.
Yeah.
You have to make an effort if you want people to accept you.
Finally, you've had such a lot of success at a very young age. What's left for you? What more do you want to do?
I still want to learn more. I feel I have not learned as much as I would love to. So I want to spend the next couple of years learning more about music, learning different languages, also learning more about performances, because you can never be perfect. You always have to improve on that.
Well, if that is your outlook, you're going to be even more successful. Xandi Mzazi, one of our very, very best artists in the country today. Wonderful performance, and thank you for performing for us today here on Newsroom. It was a heartwarming experience for myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's where we have to wrap it on a very high note, I must add. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. The show repeats at 2 in the afternoon with a rebroadcast then at 5 a.m. The following morning, we also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the show available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.